and start. So thank you for joining this session. As I said, no CLI, no Wireshark capture, basically chit-chat between the two of us. And as you see, right, we're not too many in the room. Interrupt us anytime, right? And say, I am interested in this, and we can deviate from the slide.
Yeah. Okay. This is kind of your time at this point, so we're happy to adjust. Just raise your hand and we'll stop if anything piques your interest here.
So what we will cover today is basically about the IETF. The IETF is where all the protocols running the internet and also the intranet of your organization are specified, tested, right? And the thing is that anybody can participate in the IETF, right? You don't need to be a superstar. You don't need to have a PhD. You need to know what you are doing. That's better. But else, anybody. I am participating there, I mean, you as well, and Suresh as well, paid by Cisco, but we represent Suresh, Nathan, Eric. Right? So we typically don't be afraid to come there. We will come back on this later and later, but it's really a call for action because everyone is welcome. And the process, everything is public, which is not always the case in some other SDO. Okay, conversation between a senior guy and the more junior guy about this. We try to make it very funny because that's the end of the day, and we like to do it this way, right? So.
Am I doing the WebEx app part?
Yeah.
We clearly rehearsed this very well. I don't remember any of this from Amsterdam. So you probably have been in many sessions by now. You know that there's a WebEx app. You can join the room. If you have questions about this that come up later on, just feel free to plop them in there if you think of something after. I mean, obviously, we'll take questions throughout. You can talk to us at the end, but if tomorrow or next week something pops in your head, just reach out to us via the room here. All right, Eric, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So that's myself, right? Based on the picture, I'm a private pilot as well, so flying some small planes. Usually before the other Las Vegas Cisco Life, I rented a plane to fly around Las Vegas. I did it once, twice, 3 times, and then I said, fourth time, yeah, I've seen the thing, right? So I didn't do it this year. But it's quite fun. If you have also a private pilot license, please do it. That's really fun. So I joined Cisco about 30 years ago, also active at the IETF. The first RFC I read, I was basically a researcher at the university, around 1984. And that point of time, right, it was before the web. So you get it on paper. Interesting, right? And it was this IP protocol. A couple of years later, I sent my first IP packet, which was not obvious, right? Oh, by the way, as you noticed, right, I'm a French speaking, I'm coming from Belgium. And in Belgium, we did not get internet in 1980s because it was reserved for the US. So finally, I got access and was able to send IP packets, but within my network, not linked to the internet. And since then, I was really chasing the internet, right? That's something which is really important for me. Joined Cisco about 30 years ago, as I said. First IETF meeting was in 2000. 3 years later, my first RFC was published. It was quite cool. Then we'll explain the acronyms, but OPSEC was a working group for operational security. I was the chair. And since now 7 years, I am the Internet Area Director. So basically part of the ISG. And this is the reason why I can explain to you all the processes, right, from behind, because everything is documented anyway. And I think that's it. My motto really for the internet since 1988, open, secure, end-to-end, right? Which is the reason why I'm a big, like you, pusher of IPv6, which is no NAT, so we can hope to get end-to-end connectivity there. What about you? Yeah, you see my profile there.
All right, so yes, I'm Nathan Shard. I've been with Cisco over 20 years, but it seems everyone I work with at Cisco has been here 25 or 30, so I still feel like the new guy after 20 years. I support the US federal government, so I live outside Washington, DC. You see us there. You see some applications I like to run on my laptops, one of these just on a personal one. I love Wireshark, so just digging into every field and flag within a protocol, seeing what's happening on the wire. I don't really understand what's going on until I can actually tear it apart in Wireshark, dig deep, actually relates to some of the IPv6 work I've been doing and why I got interested in that. Ties in quite nicely. Terrible graphic artist, but know my way around MS Paint pretty well. Take screenshots with colorful rectangles in them and send them to my colleagues. Don't watch tennis, or I don't play tennis, but I watch a lot of it. So I think the Grand Slam events are the best times of the year, but I've been missing pretty much all the French Open, preparing for Cisco Live, being at Cisco Live, so that's been unfortunate. And then at the bottom is my little confession, and that's my tab problem. This is just one window of 6 windows that look like that on just this laptop, and then the same thing is on my personal laptop, same thing on my phone. It's totally out of control. Whenever we're in a conversation.
But when I ask you a question, I say, oh, Eric, it's not in my open tab. I need to open a new one. And you end up like this.
Or usually I'm like, I have a tab open on that. Just give me 5 minutes to find it. Or I'll open a new one, because I can always use more tabs in my life. All right, so as I said, I've joined Cisco back in 2005, and I've heard of RFCs, at that time, but I didn't really know what they were. I mean, that was standard stuff that other people in Cisco did who are like actual smart people, and I was just trying to figure out where the coffee was in the office. But eventually, I started encountering them more and more. I am in a sales role, so I'd have customers asking me, do you support RFC, whatever? And I'm like, I've never heard of RFC, whatever, and I don't know what it does, much less whether product X supports it on version Y of code, but I will try to go find out for you. And so that's, that was life for many years. And then eventually, I really started getting into IPv6 from the US federal mandate. And after I had exhausted all of the training I could find online, YouTube videos, courses, in-person stuff, it was time to go to the source, right? Ad fontes, as they said in the Renaissance. So it was time to actually figure out what the RFCs actually said. I'd seen them referenced all over the place, and all the training, it's like, oh, as per RFC, this and that. Maybe I should actually see what that RFC says, try to read them, understand the structure of these documents. So I started reading some and then more, and now I've probably read, I don't know, dozens if not hundreds of RFCs. Some of them, it's funny, after a while you get like, you can kind of tell different authors' styles, and some are very easy for me to read, and some I'm like, I just read that paragraph 3 times and I don't know what's going on.
I can testify, that's true. Some are easier than others.
So sometimes I look at the author, I'm like, this is gonna be a good read, and sometimes not. Anyway, so after a while, I did end up, after reading RFCs, figuring I should actually join the IETF, figure out a little more of how the sausage is being made, get exposed to what's going on in the process of creating these RFCs. You hear about all these drafts in progress. How do I actually learn about what's going on in draft format rather than just waiting around until it is an RFC? Then a couple years ago, Eric invited me to actually sit in on one of the area directors' calls. So we'll get into what the ADs do in a little bit, but I've sat in on a couple of those just to understand the process a bit more. And then I guess it was almost 2 years now, a year and a half ago, I started actually finally contributing some comments on the mailing list rather than just lurking on them. And those comments were picked up and acknowledged, so we'll see later there's an acknowledgement section in RFCs for people who've helped contribute. They're not an author, but they've added some sort of comments along the way that were helpful. So I finally got some of those. And maybe if I find the right thing to work on, I would actually like to be an author on one of these at some point in the future, but one thing at a time, right? Anyway, so Eric and I, in addition to talking about the IETF here, as I mentioned as you were coming in, we run the IPv6 track here at Cisco Live. So all the tracks are organized in these like session groups, and they have a session group manager, so we decide on all the content for IPv6 and when to schedule it and which sessions we're picking up and so forth. And this was us at San Diego last year, just in case you don't believe that we hang out outside of just this session right now.
We work more than doing this, but yeah.
We're what?
Sometimes we need to relax, right? Like you were here. So, something happens in the IETF, very vaguely related to IPv6 in April and May. This was this draft, IPv8.
The draft that
How
shook
many
the
of you
world.
have seen this? Okay. It was obviously, we'll explain what is it, right? But not only there was an IPv8, Less known, there is an IPv7. And the IPv7 looks like it was generated by AI. Right? Too many things. But the first one is really done by some guy. Guy which is born in the Bermudas and now lives in Canada. Whatever. And all the technosphere, right, the techno-influencer, you read all of those things coming on my LinkedIn wall. And I guess all the images were obviously AI generated and the content most probably as well. But it strikes me, always, it's recorded, right? So I would say not stu, is, right? This is two different words and nothing in the middle, right? ID had so many traction. This is something that completely escaped me. We shall come back on this because as a SGM, right, for the extract, say, hey, why so many IPv6 sessions and no IPv8? Right, so we spent a huge amount of time on this. Okay.
It's because we had already decided on our sessions before that draft hit. That's why we didn't incorporate it, yeah. All right, so we were talking, in addition to just maybe getting you all to try something new at the IETF, we were saying, when was the last time we actually tried something new? And we came up with a couple of examples. Mine is getting into crosswords. This started several years ago. I was at a neighbor's house a lot of the time, and they were always working on it, so it'd start by helping them finish in the last couple letters, but they had tons printed out. So I was like, can I maybe work on some for myself? And before I knew it, that had turned into, I was subscribed to the New York Times games and doing it every single day on my phone. I'm in a crossword text thread with a bunch of people where we post our times. So yeah, crosswords all of a sudden became a big part of my life. This is the mega one they publish once a year. Paper only, for what it's worth. This is not a typical crossword size. It's actually not hard, it's just extremely long to do. It takes a long time. Eric, meanwhile, I don't even know what that is. Maybe you can explain that.
We have one grapevine at home, right? Even in Belgium, we can grapes. And I tried to make wine. So I took the white-green grapes and tried to make them a white wine. But I left the skin of the grapes too long in the wine. So it was not white, it was orange. And honestly, orange is trendy. When I tried it 2 years ago, I never tasted it before. It's kind of strange, right? I mean, I find it good because that's mine, but you need to try. For a long time I was at the university, I did between chemistry and computer science, so sometimes I need to try chemistry. My wife said the wine is awful. I said it's okay. But okay, right, we can disagree.
I think I'll just stick to the Belgian beer.
Yeah, the Belgian beer is better, and I do beer as well. So what we will do and cover, where do the standards come from? I mean, RSC, they appear on the web, but yeah, there's a process behind. We will talk about the IETF organization, how is it structured, what is the publication process from one ID, basically to an RSC, and later to the implementation. We will do the same thing for IEEE, and we also will present some new work being done both at IEEE and at the IETF, something that are either interesting or can impact you. So talking about the new work, what are the keywords or the topics that are highly everywhere in Cisco Live? Can you shout two of them? AI and?
Security.
What?
Security.
Yeah, but one specific of security?
Zero trust.
Nah. Quantum, post-quantum.
Post-quantum?
It's very related, right? So, thank you. So, where do standards come from? Because if you don't have standards, you end up something like this, right? Where the rail, for instance, do not match because there was something wrong in the planning. And look about this map of Europe. It represents the different size of the rail gauge. So a train from France can travel to Belgium and to Germany and to Poland because it's the same rail gauge. Now look about this country, Ukraine. Different rail gauge. So when they wanted to export their grain, typically to Russia, but they don't do it right anymore, they wanted to export it to Western Europe. No way to do it by train. So they need to put two rail tracks, two different rail gauge, and transfer the grain. not grain by grain, but it takes time. So that's important, right? But you have other examples.
Yeah, not just for train standards. It gets even worse with electrical power, you imagine. If you've traveled anywhere around the world, you have to go get the right adapter for that country. So when I go to Amsterdam, to dig into my closet, find that adapter. We were in London last summer with my family, had to go get a different adapter. And it's one of those things where it just developed over time, but man, if we could have standardized that at the very beginning, 150 years ago or whatever, could have saved a lot of hassle. But now, I mean, it's pretty much impossible to go and change out the power infrastructure everywhere around the world, every outlet in existence. It's just not going to happen because we didn't have standards in place at the beginning, and then things got out of control. Now, it's not all bad news because we at least have made some progress in the world of standards. Over Christmas break, my wife and I, as part of a cleaning project, decided to gather every single little, adapter connector thing around our house. We probably ended up with like 70 of them. And it was this big rationalization process. Which ones do we still need? We had 27 lightning cables. It's like, do we need 27? No, we don't. We're actually counting devices, because we had, a couple dozen micro USB as well. We used to have tons of micro USB devices. We only had one. We used to have tons of lightning devices. We only have 2 left. Everything else had actually changed over to USB-C at this point, and that was very refreshing to see. I thank the European Union for pushing this on Apple and then saying, all right, if we have to do it for them, we might as well do it for everybody. So we're still in that transition. It'll be a while before all the USB type A gets out, but this is like successful standards in process, and it's exciting to be in a USB-C future here starting already.
Yep. So when I started doing networking, one of my first Cisco Live, it was called Networkers. I was a customer. And I got this T-shirt. And in the back, it was the list of all the protocols supported by iOS router. It was CGS and IGS and the same and the like.
I think we're now going to be deprecating all these finally as part of Project Broccoli, maybe?
I mean, I was running, for instance, ChaosNet for list machine because we were doing AI. I mean, at that point of time, it was expert system. SNA, yes, shame on me. NetBIOS, PPP, we still do it, right? Frame relay, but Apollo domain, Xerox, XNS. And of course, there was IP somewhere. There was no IPv6 at that point of time, but there was IP. So obviously, some of them were standards between quotes. But it doesn't mean that the standards stay alive. Right? It needs to get a market and need to be useful and used by people. Typically, out of those, we still have PPP and we have IP. All the rest has disappeared. Right? So when people say, hey, regarding the V6, it's difficult for me because I'm running an IPv4 and IPv6 network, dual stack. Yes, it's more complex than running only one, but I'm laughing, right? Because I was running routing protocol for 5 or 6 protocols at that point of time.
Yeah, we still deploy multi-protocol routers, V4 and V6, dual stack.
Yeah, but I was more than dual stack, right? I was the Deca stack or whatever. Anyway, so standards are coming from different organizations. Okay, for instance, you get open SDO, Standards Development Organization, like IETF, where literally anybody can participate, right? Everyone in this room can participate and influence the standards and the internet, really. IEEE is also open, but it's more sometimes for enterprises, right? It's a little bit more expensive. But the standards sometimes are free, sometimes are not free as well. And then you have based country or region-oriented. Country like ITU is coming from the United Nations, right? So you need to be they call a member state, a country basically, to be part of the discussion. Typically, there are technical people, right? For instance, Cisco is joining the US representation to ITU to provide the Cisco voice, together with HP and others, of course, right? So that's how it works. ETSI is a European something, so you need to be an organization where the headquarters is based in Europe. And you get specifically more like vertical market, like 3GPP for everything which is mobile data. So different kind of SDO, everyone produce standards. And if you compare, for instance, the IETF as opposed to traditional SDO, like ITU, to be the extreme, IETF, we do not vote. Right? It's not one vote for Cisco, one vote for, let's say, HP, one vote for NVIDIA, whatever. No. We don't vote. We'll come back on this. That's a little bit tricky sometimes. While SDO, ITU, they vote. USA, 1 point. Belgium, 2 points, right? Something like that. The IETF, we organize by ourselves. There is no real government mandates or whatever, which is not the case, for instance, for the ITU. The trick is that we adopt it whether it's the markets select which protocol is running and successful. There are many RFC that has never been deployed because they were useless. That's a shame, but that's okay. While in the case of USB-C, it was not coming from ITU, but it was mandated by law in Europe, right? So there are different ways. I would love sometimes that, as I'm a big IPv6 fan, that EU or US say, hey, and this year we shut down IPv4 and we deploy IPv6 only.
We kind of tried in the government mandate, but.
Yeah, and the Czech Republic want to also shut down IPv4, I don't know. I think it's a dream, right? So much I know it is my dream, the reality makes it impossible. Right? And typically, the IETF is focused on internet technologies. Other SDO can be broader as well. Okay? And it's what we call bottom-up, meaning that anybody can come to an IETF meeting. Hey, I have an idea to transfer IP packets over Pigeon. And by the way, there is an RFC for this. You can create a working group if you have enough people around you to do it, and you will end up with an RFC, right, or multiple RFC. Anybody can do this. There is nothing coming from the top or from the leadership to the bottom, right? The leadership is only there to basically urge the cats, and that's it. Nathan.
All right, so why choose to go after the IETF? So this might apply to you. Some, it's kind of a mixture of these for me as well. I mean, why not? It's free. You do it as yourself. You're not kind of like sent there on a mission by your employer, except it's kind of different for you. But for the average person, you can say more in a second, it's just a way to get more in depth. If you care about a specific technology and you want to actually talk to the experts around the world who are shaping that, who are involved in that, you can hear like their thoughts on the matters on the mailing list. You can contribute yourself. If you've been reading RFCs and now you want to go deeper, or you kind of want to see what's coming around the corner, you want to see the sausage getting made, or at least just know what's kind of going to be an RFC in the future so that you can, be ahead of the curve and be shaping conversations with, your own organization or your own customers. These are all good reasons to possibly get involved. It's a little different. You want to talk about kind of your role in terms of the time spent in representing yourself?
Yeah, so we'll come back on the detail, but I am paid by Cisco full-time, right? And I spend about 50% helping the IETF of my time. And I'm spending more, 25% of helping my Cisco colleagues to the IETF, basically greasing the wheels and explaining the process, right? So sometimes some Cisco colleagues don't even know the slide that will be coming. So I send them this presentation, right? So they know the basis, and then they say, yeah, this is how we can publish the standards for doing this.
Yeah, so in your case, Cisco actually expects you to spend half your time there, but for 99% of the people involved, that's not the case. Yeah.
So, IETF organization. The mission of the IETF has been written there in 1990 or something like that. The mission of the IETF is to make the internet work better by producing high quality and relevant technical documents, the RFC, right? And influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. It's a kind of, high dream, but we try to do it this way. And the way we do it is basically the points, open process. All the steps are open. For instance, if you want to join what you were calling the IG evaluation, this is basically where people like me decide, yes, this RFC is to be published, yes or no. It's public. If you have nothing to do on Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific, I can forward you, or you look for it, you have the code, the WebEx code, and you can join. Right? Everybody can join this. So if we block an RFC or we approve it, You listen to it, so everything is transparent. Sometimes we go in what we call executive mode. This is when we need to talk about some specific, because in my role, it's not only a technical role for approving or not approving the draft into RFC, but it's also, hey, these people is when completely crazy on the mailing list or in meetings, we need to moderate him. And this one is basically secret, right? Because we don't want to name people. This is the only part, basically. Technical competence, yes, we try to do our best to have a good technical document, which is the reason why each and every potential RFC has been read and reviewed by 10, 20 people. It takes time, by the way, on doing this. The core are volunteers, right? And nobody is paid. I mean, I'm not paid by the IETF for doing even if I spend 50%, right? And when I attend a meeting, to attend a meeting, you need to pay $700 or $800 now dollars. I even have to pay, even if I spend already 50% of my time, right? So it's kind of strange. We will come back on this later. Draft consensus. We do not vote, but we try to reach a consensus. Consensus is reached when, okay, not everyone agrees, but there is a good balance between people agreeing and people disagreeing. Right? It's pretty much like if you are in a couple, or if you've got friends, you try to get right consensus to select the movie or to select the restaurant. Right? This kind of stuff. And we really want to own a protocol. So it means that once a protocol has been started, let's say you design a protocol, you come to the IETF with it, it's no more your protocol. This is the IETF protocol. The change control belongs to the IETF, so belongs to the 2,000 engineers participating at the IETF. Right.
Real quick comment on this. So you mentioned the technical documents that influence the way people design, use, manage the internet are RFCs. Hopefully you're all familiar, but RFC is request for comment, which confused me for a long time when I first heard it, because I was like, so are they soliciting comments, or is it a technical standards document? And it's just a name that evolved from the 1970s or 80s, and when they did things kind of a different way. We've kept the name request for comment, but the request for comments come well before it actually becomes an RFC. It's a little backwards.
I was not part of the IETF. I was still at the high school at that point of time. Yeah. So the IETF itself, can you explain?
Yeah, so, oops, I didn't click too far. Okay, so Eric will talk about ISOC in just a second, but below that, the IETF is organized into 7 areas, and each of those areas contain a bunch of different working groups, and working groups are where, as the name implies, the work actually happens, right? So we'll go into a lot more detail on kind of what are these working groups, what they do, but as you see, that's kind of like the key unit of the IETF. And so again, many more details. And then related to the IETF is something called the IAB, and you have, I think, a slide on that in a little bit as well. And they made us change fonts this year for Cisco Live, and occasionally it made things wrap around that we missed. So sorry about that.
Yeah, as a speaker, basically Cisco Corporate change the template every year for every Cisco Live, even between Amsterdam in January and Las Vegas in June. So they change all the fonts you need to redo. We spent 1 hour, and this one escaped me as well. So yeah, whatever.
All right, you want to talk about ISOC?
Yeah, so ISOC, Internet Society. This is kind of the head of multiple things. It's also hosting what we call the LLC, IETF LLC. This is a corporation having all the money. IETF does not really exist per se, just a name, and there's nothing. If you want to go by legal, you need to get incorporated, and this is the LLC. There is another one that holds all the copyrights, which is the trust or the IPMC now. So it also gets funding to the IETF, because even if I said, I need to pay $800 to participate in person, remote is free, by the way, so don't need to pay if you want to dial in. But even if I pay 800, it's not enough to cover the meeting rooms and so on. So do we need to get more money? We need to get money as well to get the website running and so on, right? So the ISOC is giving us a huge amount of money. This is the principal source of funding there. How is ISOC funded? Notably because I had my own domain, Vink.org, that I pay $10 a year. Part of this money goes back to the ISOC. Multiply this by all the .org, you get a big pile of money. right? So when you pay for a domain name, depending upon who you pay, but if you have a .org, you pay the internet, which is cool, right? Yeah, that's kind of a snake eating its own tail. Key roles, they appoint the NomCom chair. NomCom stands for Nomination Committee. These are basically 10 people that every year vote to renew half of the leadership. It's completely secret. It's the only part which is completely secret and confidential in the IETF. We have no clue there what's happening. So that's important. And the NomCom chair this year is Magdalena Mishra, who is a Cisco person, which is a Cisco speaker here as well. He's doing multicast and BGP. So if you happen to go in session, he's a NomCom chair. He doesn't vote, by the way. He's simply coordinating everything. And they accept the IAB candidates. So, for instance, we have an IAB member here with Suresh, right?
Celebrity in the house.
He has been confirmed by the Internet Society. That's basically the organization there. Working groups, you were talking about them.
Right, so this is what I was saying before. This is where the work actually takes place, and bottom-up formation means these working groups aren't just decided on by the area chairs, or directors, which, by the way, there's what, about 2 to 3 for each area, can depend. But yeah, they're not saying these are the working groups that must exist within my area. It's more, there's this kind of idea out there and people come together and say, hey, we think there's a specific need that would be solved or addressed by having a new working group. It isn't really covered by any existing charters, so let's put a new one together. We'll come up with a charter for that, and we can discuss specific issues around that. And again, we'll see.
And just to be clear, the charter is the kind of a contract among the 2,000 IETF participants to work on this very well-defined scope, right? If you want, for instance, to talk about DNS for AI, you can only talk about DNS for AI. Don't talk about BGP for AI, right? Or DNS for BGP or whatever.
Yeah, not in scope. So they do meet, these working groups come together at the face-to-face meetings that are 3 times a year, the plenary sessions, but a lot of the conversation will happen on the mailing list. Most of the IETF, stuff that happens is via email on mailing lists. So there's a mailing list per each working group, and some have a lot more activity than others, but that is kind of the main communication place. Everything is archived, so you can go online right now and see all the conversations that have existed for any working group going back, I don't know how many years, but probably a bunch. However, moving forward, you see it on this slide and the next one, although all the significant changes that would happen as we discuss drafts, and we'll see some examples, should be email on the working groups. For little grammar and nit things like that, GitHub is starting to become more common in usage, so you can just give people PRs that way rather than clogging up the mailers with little typos and grammar changes. But yeah, the email list is where the last calls go out. So speak now, forever hold your peace type thing. If you missed that email, well, you missed it. So
yeah. So, and all those archives are completely open, right? Don't even need to register a distribution list of any mailing list as well. Right, so it's really, really open. It costs nothing, right? Have a look, by the way, which was your first mailing list?
6-man.
6-man.
And then V6 ops.
IPv6 working groups, basically.
All right, so we've been talking about these working groups. They are put into one of the 7 areas. Most of them have a bit, GEN only has, what, 4 maybe? But all the others have between maybe 15 and 35 working groups that are inside of them. And when I first looked at this, I wasn't quite sure the difference because all these. I saw, internet transport, internet, routing. These all kind of sound the same to me. They do have some differences. I don't know if you want to take a minute and explain a little bit about the 7 different areas you encounter.
Oh, yeah, very easily, right? GEN is basically about the processes, right? So if you want to change a process to become an RSC, discussion happens there. I was talking about moderation. If somebody, in 2,000 people, there are, of course, 1 guy or 2 ladies that are misbehaving, right? Abusing terms or whatever. So we need to moderate them.
I saw some of that on the IPv8 discussion. There was one guy who was like, you need to...
No, IPv8 was discussed, right? But I was monitoring it because it's very easy when I'm talking to you, hey, which is a id ID, right? But I cannot write it, right? I mean, I can say the ID is stupid, but I couldn't say this is a stupid guy, right? This one I can say. We can criticize ID, but we cannot criticize human being. So we need to get some rules around this to make it clear. This is the end. Art, application in real time. If you do WebEx, you are using WebRTC. Where is it coming from? This area. Right? A lot of things linked to the application layer basically is coming there. This is one of the biggest area, by the way. WIT is everything which is related to transport, so TCP, right, and UDP, but also tunneling like mask, if you have heard about it, using Quick. So this is part of there.
All the quick stuff is in there, right?
Yeah. It's transport. Int, this is where I'm working. This is all the IP layer, including ICMP and DNS and an NTP, right? All the control part, let's say, of the internet, and what we call the sub-IP. How do you map IPv6, let's say, on IEEE 802.15.4, 802.15.14, yeah, ZigBee, right? Except that ZigBee is not IP, but this is there. Ops, RTC routing, BGP, knowing that BGP is not in the BGP working group, but in the IDR working group, inter-domain routing. Okay, just to confuse people. Ops, everything which is operation, and also management, so all the Yang model, NetConf, and so on. And security, including post-quantum crypto. And per area, depending upon the size, there are one, most of the time 2 or 3 area directors. And I'm one of the 2 for the int area. And we are selected for 2 years, and then we need to be reelected and reelected. So I've been reelected 4 times, and then after I retire, right? So I won't be elected the 5th time. You can get more details there. But you make some research.
All right, so the working groups. These are the things you may encounter or hear names about, and you're like, what is someone talking about? So there were 136, at least as of a couple months ago. I don't know if that's the actual number right now, because they do come and go somewhat, but there's not like a high amount of churn, but they do come into creation with new ones, and some are eventually retired. The most interesting thing about working groups is the names of them. Some are pretty straightforward, so you could see DChem, that's like DNS operations, so that all makes sense. Then there's the ones that clearly people are having a bit of fun with.
And we spend, honestly, as area director, we need to select and approve the name of the working group. We spend minutes finding a fun one, right?
Yeah, there's some bike shedding with working group names going on. But yeah, you can just take a look through some examples. So someone says, oh, this came up in Spring. You're like, what on earth is Spring? Oh, of course, source packet routing in networking. Things like that, right? And these will be the names of the working groups that'll be in all the draft documents and kind of let you know where things happen. I mean, people got really out of control when it got to Happy, so that's Happy Eyeballs. It was already a technology. Then they're like, let's put a working group behind that. Now, how can we possibly make it work? Oh, we'll just put the Y in the middle of the word and capitalize it there. Because
which is, of course, not really.
Why not, right?
Yeah. And you forget the one I like is snack.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's one of mine. Yep.
Yeah. Snack is a new thing for IPv6. We might have a slide on that a little bit later.
Forget
No, we cut it, but anyway, yeah, I like snack. Snack's fun. Cat's a good one. Yeah, you can see all them. Plants, yeah. You would never think you heard plants that it's talking about PK logs and tree signatures. I mean, kitten, they switched the C to a K. I mean, some are loose.
Not to mention we got cats, traffic steering, and kitten, right? So, I mean, anyway.
People are having a bit of
fun. Fun
with acronyms and stuff. All right.
So if you look about now the working groups and how many RSC there is published for many, many years, right, since 1980 or something, you see, yeah, application area, right? So this is the biggest part of it.
Looking for my water.
Yes, we do. And you see, for instance, internet area, yeah, about 70. IPv6 operation, about, I don't know, 80 as well. So it's kind of surprising sometimes, right? And I will talk later and describe now everything that is around the IETF. So for instance, we can start with the IETF trust, now IPMC, that's all the copyrights. Basically, an RSC can be published, anybody, but we still need the copyright. Right? You can still say, yeah, Everyone can distribute it, copy, or whatever, but the copyright stays to the IETF, and one part which is the trust, or IPMC now. NomCom, I've explained, this is the 10 people that every year elect, or select and elect, 50% of the IETF leadership. Our IETF, Internet Research Task Force. This is mainly for academic and universities, of course, or some research organization. They don't have working group, they have research group, RG, and not WG. It's basically, they also produce RFC, no standards though, I will explain the difference later, but they do work vaguely, something which is not deployable. So they were talking about post-quantum crypto 5 or 10 years ago already, or at least 5 years, this kind of stuff. The IAB, Internet Architecture Board, they are, let's say, the wise guy. They are looking way forward, setting a direction. For instance, what do we do about IP address geolocation or edge verification? This kind of very, very long term. And they are also basically above the ISG, Internet Engineering Steering Group. The steering group, this is the 14 area directors, right? So I'm part of the ISG there. And I said IAB is above, because if somebody appeal a decision made by us, let's say we discuss, we block an RFC to be published, anybody, including you, can make an appeal. And the appeal is done by the IAB. And if you are not happy with the IAB explanation or decision, you can appeal to the ISOC, Internet Society above. Then after, forget about it, right? You lost. Directorates, there are a group of people, what they call reviewers, on specific topic like DNS, BGP, Yang. And those experts can review a document at the request of a working group chair or an area director. There's basically help, there's a tank of experts. IETF sisters, look about this room, right? There is only one lady, about 10 people. IETF does the same thing. So we try to change this. And while we don't have this in Cisco Live, at the IETF, they got a breakfast and one lunch together. So to allow some kind of social networking among them. And by the way, in the leadership, there are several ladies. The tools team, and you were part of it and I'm part of it, there's basically the tools that we are using, the web tools, to process all the documents, called Data Tracker. It tracks the data. It's open source and can be developed by anybody, right? There's a huge amount of issue and you fix them or propose features. That's basically it. So next slide are basically exactly what I just said, but in written, so you can read it at home back. Oh, something I forgot to mention is the RFC editor, because once a document has been approved technically, it moves to the RFC editor that will fix the typos. Many RFCs are written by non-English native people, so it's not always highly readable, so they change the syntax, not the semantics, right? They fix the typos, but they could change values or whatever. And they publish it. So they put it on an official website that will stay there forever with a URL that will never, never change. This is the RFC editor. And above, this is the IANA, Internet Assigned Number Authority. Yeah. If you ever wonder why TCP is 6 and UDP is 17, that's them, right? You basically come to, hey, can I get this kind of address? Can I get this kind of port number? And they're in the registries for all the numbers, because, yeah, obviously we cannot get overlapping thing, right?
All right, so everyone made total sense of that so far? No questions? Because we're going to go into
we dive now. We dive.
Yeah, and we might actually have to pick up the pace a little looking through. But okay, so some imagination versus reality. So when I first came on, it was, seemed a little intimidating because everyone there, imagine as some complete expert, and I didn't want to feel like the noob guy walking in and embarrassing myself in some way. So it's like, should I even say anything with all these people? In reality, it's fine. There are a lot of very smart people there. They do know what they're talking about, but it is welcoming to new people. They want, different voices to be heard, and I think we actually need, there needs to be more enterprise involvement in some of the V6 groups. It seems very, SP dominated. So getting new people involved is always a good thing. Getting up to speed, it depends. If you're just gonna assert your opinion out there and you have no idea what you're talking about, that's a bad thing, but you can definitely join mailing lists and start to follow along. Even if you don't catch every detail of what's being said, you can still start to see how the conversations start to flow. So in reality, pretty open community. I think people are friendly for the most part. I'd say so. And there is something for everyone. Again, with 136 different working groups, you can find something that probably interests you and join them. Again, some have more kind of participation on a regular basis on the mailers than others, but definitely take a look at it. Just read the charters for the different ones you might be interested in. So this is just an example of the V6 Ops charter, but there is one for each group. And again, sometimes they get rechartered, which just happened here for V6 Ops. They just went through a recharter, and you can see now they're trying to provide V6 operational guidance in specific deployment contexts, documents to identify obstacles to deployment and operational issues. This is what I need to talk about to customers on a weekly basis. So this is right up my alley. Again, check out others that may be of interest for you in your role, and hopefully there'll be something there. So again, how might you get started? This is just some examples. It's not super prescriptive. You don't have to follow these or go in this order necessarily, but you can look through just some ideas to maybe, if you're not even sure where to begin, take a look at this. As I was saying, find a couple working groups that might interest you, read their charters, join the mailing list. If it's not for you, you can always just drop it. It's not a huge deal. And if you're able to get the funding, which I'm still working on because I spend all my travel budget coming to Cisco Lives, but they do have 3 meetings in person every year. So if you can get yourself out to one of those, it's a great way to meet people as well. All right, this is just a bit about some of my efforts to date. So I mentioned I have contributed. It's actually 3 different draft documents, but I highlighted 2 here. And yeah, if you do that, you get your name in the acknowledgments section here. And when it becomes an RFC, you're there for the whole world to see, I guess. But
and honestly, the first time it happens to me, I was so proud, right? Because I wanted to get, for me, the internet is the open stuff, end-to-end, and working for the good of the mankind. And we know the internet is used for dirty stuff as well, right? But I was so happy to get my name, like you, in the acknowledgement. And then I moved to authors. Next challenge.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, the only problem with this one here is that I would like to see this become an RFC, but I have one problem standing in my way. And that problem is standing to the right of me. So
at some point of time, it becomes, right, we will look in the process how it comes, but at some point of time, the 14 area director says yes or no. I mean, actually, it's yes, no objection, or discuss. And I discuss, because I wanted to get to discuss there. And it was a situation last year in San Diego. It was at that point of time. And then it changed, right? At Amsterdam time, I said, yeah. I got the reply, they changed the text to fit my requirement. And my requirement, right, to change must be serious and sensible, right, obviously. So, okay, it was yes, then green lights, and now it's...
But now we're still stuck in RFC editor queue due to a whole series of dependencies. So there's not problems with the actual language of the document at this point. It's a series of dependencies and references that is hanging stuff up. All right, so let's actually talk through the publication process. So you have an idea and you want that to become an RFC. So it's kind of like Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law. This is how an idea becomes an RFC portion of it. So first, you just need to be aware of the different type of documents and categories that exist. So everything starts life as an IETF draft. So Eric has been saying ID a bunch throughout the session. It's just shorthand for IETF draft. Anything before it's an official RFC is just a draft. And a draft does not mean it's guaranteed to become an RFC at all. So sometimes vendors, including us, might talk about a draft as if it's like a guaranteed thing. Some, it's a much higher chance. Others, just because it's a draft, it may never go anywhere. And so you kind of have to have a sense of what's likely to move on and what's not. So you may see this in a couple different ways. So it'll always start with draft, and then you'll see an author's name next. So it could be an author's last name, it could be multiple authors' names squished together, a series of initials. It kind of, maybe just one of like 4 authors, it kind of depends, but there's some sort of author name as that second field. And when you see the author name there, without the, what am I trying to say? Okay. Before it's in a working group, you just see it like that. When you actually see IETF appear, now that's when the IETF has taken it over and a working group has actually adopted it. So first you just kind of put it out there with the working group that you hope might pick it up one day. There's no guarantee they will, so that's why you see author, then WG name. If the working group chooses to take it, then it becomes draft IETF. Now it's a property of that working group. Discussions continue to happen, and then if it makes it all the way through there, it goes through working group last call, people sign off on it, goes to the ISG, blah, blah, blah. Then.
And when you arrive at draft IETF, it means that this document is most probably 80% chance of being implemented. The first one is basically 10%, 20%, something like that. It depends upon the author, right?
Yeah, let's say the IPv8 draft has not made it to the working group stage. And probably will not.
No, on my dead body, right, basically.
So at the end, eventually, if you exit the working group, and we'll go through some of that process in a second, it will become an RFC. There's several different types of RFCs it may end up as. The most common one you're probably familiar with is the standards track. This is, you actually need something that vendors can go and implement and code against, and it kind of defines how things are going to work. But there's also many informational RFCs out there. And I was surprised, there's actually way more than you might think. A lot of the stuff around V6 these days, because the standard is pretty well defined, but there continues to be many, many RFCs about certain best practices or analyzing how things, state of the industry or where things are deployed, pros and cons of certain technologies, all sorts of stuff you can find out there in informational documents. They're often easier reads because the standards ones, it's like meant for the implementers to be able to code it up, and it can be a little.
So what you find typically informational is architectures, framework, roadmap, basically. So describing all the other pieces that are proposed standards are, right? It's basically the map.
Then there's experimental. So this is, we want to try it out. We'll give you a shot. You can go. Do they reserve the code points at IANA or not yet?
They
when it's an experiment?
It depends upon the diagram.
Okay, so it can still do it. So it's interesting because you'll find some standards track documents that just never really got implemented anywhere, and you'll find some experimental stuff out there that is very widely deployed. That's more the exception than the rule, but definitely happens. I mean, NPTv6 has been an experimental standard for over a decade now and is implemented by a lot of vendors, so there you go. And then finally, there's like a subset of standards documents that are BCPs, best current practices. These get their own number in addition to their RFC number and are really meant for that. The special ones where it's like, this is actually really important guidance to follow. I don't know if you have any comments on those, but.
Yep.
Okay.
No specific.
All right, yeah. All right, so this is how we actually get your idea to become an RFC. So you have an idea in your head, you go, aha, the internet, the world needs to hear my wonderful idea. I start typing it up, and you should probably put it in the official format. There's some required sections in the document or whatever, but you then submit it as internet draft, and it's just in your name so far, and you say, please pick this up. Probably put it on a mailer for a specific working group, and you say, hey, I think this is a good idea. It may go back and forth as people give you comments or suggestions of things you need to do before they even consider it as a working group. So you might have a bunch of iterations through there. And after you repeat that a bunch of times, if there's a rough consensus in the working group that, hey, this sounds like a decent idea, we want to continue the conversation, make it a bit more official, get some more eyes on this, it'll become into the working group itself. So how would you tell? Again, we kind of looked at it before. Here's what they're hoping the track is to become. That could change along the way, but while it's in draft form, that's just the intended status, may or may not end up as such. And you see the draft form at this point just has the author's name in it. Okay. Now, if we've been picked up by the working group, it's republished as the draft. They have, the working group is now in control of it. So it switches over from the authors to there. It will then go through another series of comments and reviews and edits. Sometimes it's just a couple. If you saw one of the drafts I was working on earlier, it went through 25 iterations. So republished as version 2, version 3, version 4. Version 25, I mean, that's not typical, but what's the longest you've seen?
More than 100.
More than 100. Again, very atypical, but it can happen. So eventually, after 1, 2, 3, 25, 100 iterations, there's when it seems like it's solidified, settled in, no more significant changes are going to be coming, they send out a working group last call. Again, make sure there's...
And the last call is pretty much like if you go to a pub in UK, right, then stop the bar at, I think, midnight, and midnight, 15 minutes before midnight, they say, last call, last chance to order a beer, right, or whatever. Same thing here, last chance to provide a comment.
Yeah, so you see this one, it actually had its status changed when it got picked up by the working group to just informational, because when this was published, Cisco has had TACX for a very long time. We finally kind of brought it to the IETF and said, let's make this an open standard rather than Cisco proprietary. The version we were bringing that had been in use for a long time did not support TLS wrapped around it, so they didn't want to make it a standards track when it didn't have kind of an encryption wrapper. So this version of it stayed informational. Then later on, there was an RFC for TACX inside TLS 1.3. That one was standards track. But you see here now it's draft IETF. So that's kind of the difference there. All right, finally, maybe you pick it up here because this is where you often come into play, right?
So after the working group last call, the working group, right, so it varies between 10 and 100 people. Say, we are ready. Next step is to go in front of the 14 area director for a deeper and also transversal evaluation. Because the security AD, the ops AD, the routing AD, the int AD, and so on, will have a look. Even if the document is nothing to do with my specialty. So I accept condolence because I need to review all the YAG models, right? Which is kind of boring, to be honest. This morning, I was reviewing the security document about open authentication. And I'm far away of it, but you need to review it for a couple of things. And then once you are OK with this, we are also sending what we call an IETF last call, which actually is done before I am evaluating it. It's the same thing for the working group last call, but then it's not within a working group. This is across the complete 2,000 or whatever IETF participants to get a wider review. But not everyone is reviewing it. And something which is important, as I said, it's not only about voting, and Dave Clark works with Longo. The IETF rejects kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus. A rough can be rough sometimes, but consensus, as I explained, you have a group of friends. Hey, we want to go to a restaurant tonight. We want vegan, Thai, or skewers and beef. And okay, of course, not everyone agrees, but we manage, right, between sensible people.
It was like that restaurant we went to in Amsterdam. There was rough consensus, but there was one objector, but yeah. I was overruled.
Yeah. So it's not always easy, right? Because sometimes people that say no, and you say, no, it never changed. That's annoying, so we need to override this. And sometimes that's easier said in a sentence than done in reality. But there's a point. And running code would be nice as well. At some point of time, when all the meetings were in person, but then we got the COVID, and we are now running the meetings hybrid, in person and remote, so we cannot do this. But there is something pretty cool, even if it's no more use, that's humming. Because many people at the IETF are geeks. If you think that here there are many geeks, right, there are even worse geeks at the IETF, right? I mean, people are shy, and sometimes they are big egos, but they're also very shy people. So and you are sitting next to a neighbor, maybe a colleague, and when the chair says, who likes this ID? Maybe the author is next to you. So if we say, raise your hand, and you don't raise your hand, do you like the ID? Or who dislike and you raise your hand, you made an enemy, right? So what they do, they hum. Rather than raising the hand, they pronounce a sound like with variation on the loudness. So now, if all in the room, people say it's difficult to see whether it's your neighbor or the neighbor of your neighbor. So you are kind of anonymous. Okay, we don't do it anymore, because you cannot do it when people that are remote of something like WebEx, it's called Meeteco. So we don't do it, but it was kind of fun. So once it's done, right, it goes to the RFC editor, where they fix the typos and so on. And they got also sometimes delay, because one draft refers to another draft. And of course, when they are published, we need to get RFC numbers for those two. I refer to this C RFC blah blah. But if this draft is not yet published, we cannot put a number. So they move together, right? We need to say what we call in the cluster, 2, 3, 4, and the subject you are talking was 5, wait together. They need to be published all together. So if one is moving slower than the other, it basically slows down everything, which is, annoying. So it's typically around 2 years, right? I've seen one that has been done in 2 months because it was urgent. It was to fix something into a protocol. Everyone agrees, it's tack, 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 tack. And we asked RFC editor, as fast as you can. So they did it. So for instance, we go there, and we arrive at the end. RFC is published. We see RFC request for comment. We got the number, and that's it. Now, most of the RFC are published in something we call the IETF stream. 99% or 95% are there. They can be standards, BCP, experimental. But we have also IEB. Sometimes they publish documents about their workshop they are doing. They are informational only. RRTF can be informational or experimental. And they need to check with the ISG, the 14-area director, whether the work done by the research group should have done into a working group. So we detect conflicts. There is also something called independent submission, where drafts are coming to become an RFC without a working group. It's typically, for instance, stuff that are coming out of a vendor. Apple specification of this, Cisco specification of that. Obviously, we never get a consensus. If it's Apple, and Microsoft will not say, no, 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 I don't want to do this, right? But they publish and they open it.
Another famous one, there's some NSA guys, they define like the CNSA specification. They actually did that as an RFC. If you're familiar with CNSA 2.0, that came in through an ISS stream.
Yeah, because that's typically something from US, right? Yeah. Or to check the stream, if you see Network Working Group, Internet Draft, this is the IETF. If you see on the top, Internet Research Group Task Force, this is the RRTF, and then IAB, for instance, or even independent submission. Remember, there are two things when you see an RFC. You need to check the category, experimental or whatever, and the source. If you say ICE, it has been reviewed by 2 or 3 people. If you see IETF, so basically this one, Network Working Group, it has been reviewed normally by possibly 50, 100 people, right? So the quality is higher, and the consensus behind the community is higher. So the probability to be implemented correctly is this one. This is the top of the top.
That's also the vast majority of them as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we do everything, right? So a Canadian guy called Marc Blanchet wrote something called faster than light speed protocol. It's basically, you are sending a signal, and then we can use AI to predict the next value, right? Send a movie, using AI, you can predict the next frame. So you are then faster than light. So there is a publication there. Informational, independent submission, and the date, 1st of April. So 1st of April is this April Fool's Day, RFC. There are 1 or 2 or 3 per year. One of my RFC is one.
Yeah, there's some pretty good ones over the years if you look through the history of the April Fool's RFCs. Yeah.
So always fun, right? So you go there and see.
I had one idea once where it was like, you know how you're talking to someone on the phone and they change something and it's like, is that better now? And it's better right when they say those words, and everyone's like, yeah, and then it immediately falls off again. It's like there's some sort of magic in the voice over IP where it's like you say, is that better now? It like sends those packets through, but then everything else, they get higher priority.
Yeah, whatever.
Is that real? Is that RFC real?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
so
a real RFC, but it's known to be a joke because of the April 1st thing. Yeah.
That's the trick. All the
No, it's in the RFC editor. You'll find it online. Yeah.
Yeah. Search for it and you will find. Google it. So it's a real, but everyone knows. At least now, everyone knows it's a joke, right? I mean, you will read it. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. And there is the IP over pigeon, right? Avian carrier.
Carrier pigeons. Yeah.
There's I think the funniest one is the evil bit. So there's they took a flag from the IP header and called it the evil bit. So the idea is bad traffic. If you're bad traffic, you send that bit. So all it can be filtered off by the people, right? Not as somebody's going to do it, but that was
Yeah. For those on the recording, he was talking about the evil bit RFC.
Yeah, this one is a good one. And typically, the publication date is only months and year. The only exception where we publish the date, the actual day, is for April Fool's Day, just to be sure, right? So people get it. Now, if you look about how many RFC has been written by which companies, I am proud. Cisco, we wrote about 2,600 RFCs. And then unspecified, that's when we don't know the source of the authors. And then, amazingly, the third one is Huawei. And they are active in the IETF maybe for 10 years maximum, or 10, 15 years. So they are catching up a lot. They are seeing the benefit of investing there, right? I cannot criticize them. They play the role, mostly, and they play the open, right? So that's cool. And then you see companies that are Orange, Alcatel, Apple, VeriSign that are doing 100 or 200 RFC, right? But nothing prevents you or anybody in this room having your company having one in 2 years, right? Or in 2 in 3 years. Everything is open. No, beating Cisco will be tough, right? So back to IPv7 and IPv8, right? Now, yes?
Have you guys been in a situation like the approval, let's say somebody makes an RFC and it said it takes 2 years for approval?
Yeah.
So what happens if the technology gets obsolete and you're still waiting for the answer? So have you guys been in that situation?
So sometimes I just review a draft and approve it that has been started in 2017. This is for young semantic versioning. It has been kind of shipping already, but we'll specify it. But we can potentially see that one big problem was there 10 years ago. If it takes 10 years to standardize it, it's no more used. Yeah, useless. Which is the reason why we'll be talking about AI and post-quantum crypto, where we try to go very fast. Because if you don't move fast, then you are becoming irrelevant, specifically on these two hot topics. Right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just to answer one more thing on top of what Eric said. So the IESG at some point, when it reaches them, if they think it's too late, they can just mark it dead. So they can say, do not publish, and they mark it dead. And it has happened too. Sometimes it took too long, and it's not worth publishing. The IESG can say,
Yep.
mark it dead.
So the command is that not only we can say approve or discuss, right? So change it to make it valuable. We can say that. I mean, people are not happy when we do this, right? But yeah. Yep.
What happens when somebody writes a draft that involves something that's patented or proprietary?
So talking about patents and IPR, intellectual property right, we don't say intellectual property at the IETF because it means IP, and IP in the IETF means Internet Protocol, right? So there is a BCP, best common practice, that as soon as you participate at the IETF, including the mailing list, by the way, you need to approve it. When you are approving your membership to a mailing list, You say, hey, I'm following BCP 78 or 79, pretty bad with number. They say, if I know about any intellectual property related to the discussion, I need to declare it. Right? So typically, Cisco declare IPR. And now, when you declare an IPR on your name, you also need to say what is the licensing. And typically what Cisco is doing and others are doing, okay, licensing is free as long as you can use your own patent. Right? It's mutual assured destruction. Right? So for instance, let's say Cisco and Apple, right? We got IPR on a few things, like a SRv6, I think we have IPR. Apple is supposed to release a few stuff as well. Okay, Apple use our stuff. We will never charge any royalties or whatever to you, but you need to allow us access to all your patents. Fair game, somehow. If you don't want to give your patents to the other party, then typically Cisco can ask royalties, but I think we've never done this. This is typically, but that's a good point. And it needs to be declared as soon as possible, and in sometimes, I don't remember, but a working group during the adoption call, the authors declare some IPR, the working group decided not to adopt it because the IPR, or the licensing scheme, I guess, was wrong. It was not suitable for the IETF protocol. But that's a big point. And when Cisco published a draft, I mean, I am in a team part of the global technical area standards. We are sure that all the patenting and the IPR declaration has been done so that we follow the process. That's, as I said, right, 25% of my time is spent to help my Cisco colleague to publish RFC and draft. One big part of it, which is not the most fun, to be honest, is to take care about the patent. But until now, we blocked nothing, but very good question. So
we got like 18 minutes, so we'll probably
yeah,
have
we
to.
can go. Blah.
Yeah.
So the draft IPv8, you see draft-10, not draft IETF, right? So going nowhere. And the same thing, if you go to the data tracker tools for this, you will see a big blocks there. This document is an internet draft. Anyone may submit an ID to the IETF, internet draft. This internet draft is not endorsed, right? Because it doesn't start with draft IETF. That's a clear sign.
You would never know that from reading a lot of the news articles, but
yeah.
that's what it says.
And even if you go further and you look at IANA, all the IP version has been reserved, right? And if you look about IPv4 has been reserved, 6 has been reserved for IPv6, but 7, 8, 9 has been reserved in the early 90s because there were 4 competing IP next generation. And finally, the first one, IPv6, was selected. But anyway, 7, 8, 9 are reserved.
So I need a Roman 10.
But
Yeah, exactly.
If you could use Roman numerals and then it would be IPX, that'd be great.
Excellent. So quickly, some new work items at the IETF. AI. You were wondering, hey, we need to go fast. So in AI,
No, we need to go fast.
yeah, we need to go fast as well. I like the topics too much, I speak too long. So if you think about AI generated, of course, all the LLM are crawling the internet to grab content. Not always the content provider doesn't like the idea all the time that people grab the content for free. You have basically agents need to talk to other agents. And an LLM sometimes, when it's doing inference, need to discover the agent and talk to them. So 3 different fields. Suresh, can you shout on this?
Yeah, sure.
So the Suresh I'm talking, this is the guy here, right?
I think we're going to start off the discussion of. You can show.
For the recording.
Thanks. Too close. So this AI preference is about like how content providers can signal to AI companies whether to use the content or not. Right now, any content that's on the internet is fair game for anybody to crawl and use for the training. But the EU passed a law, right, the EU Data Act, which says that you can have a machine-readable opt-out for like using this data for stuff. So we kind of started working on this to say like how can people signal that the content is not free for the AI companies to train on, right? So if you know about robots.txt, so robots.txt is like a file you put on the HTTP server at some point, and we're extending robots.txt or whatever is the protocol for the REP, the RFC 9309. So we're extending that to have new verbs in there which says like, hey, this content is okay to use for AI training or for search, right? So the idea would be like you still want to be found using search, but you don't want to train their stuff, right? So you could potentially do something like that. So we are trying to work on that to get the documents out. So the documents are pretty early in the thing. We are like in version 5 of the working group document, but please come and participate, and all your inputs are welcome. So whether you're a content provider, a government, or like an enterprise or AI company, everybody participates in this. So because it's very commercially sensitive, but yeah, please come talk to us. Thanks.
Yeah. And
Like that, we've become a lot closer as a result of this discussion.
And two other things, right? The agent-to-agent communication and discovering the agent are at the stage of both, birth of feather, which is basically whether we decide to create a working group. So we got a BOF meeting at the next IETF meeting, and we decide whether it's worth investigating agent-to-agent protocol, and Suresh is running it, or how to discover the agent, mostly using DNS. And this is a Dawn working group where I am the director. Security is important.
Question?
Everywhere. Yes, sorry.
Just out of curiosity, so is that AI graphs, is that in itself an RFC? Somebody proposed that idea?
So it is a working group, and it will
Do we
produce
have-
Yep.
It's a working group that will produce RFCs. That was the comment.
Yeah. And the working group tried to go very fast, but actually there are lawyers coming with engineers, and if you talk with lawyers and engineers, it takes time to reach consensus, if I oversimplify the slowness of the thing. So we hope that this one we don't face the same problem, but yeah. Oh, by the way, and Suresh is running a session on Friday? Thursday morning.
There is no Friday.
Yeah, there is no Friday. Too late for me. About this, so explaining all the standards done for the AI. Security is important. So there is, for instance, message layer security. This is how the group membership is done, notably with WebEx, right? So we do it very securely. This new post-quantum crypto. I guess nowadays everyone knows what we need to do with post-quantum crypto. A research group, right, created after a PQIP, post-quantum crypto protocol, which is now a working group, and draft IETF PQIP for our PQC engineers. Read it. I think it's 100 page. It's 50 page are really readable, and then after it goes in mathematics and you forget about it. But the 51st page are really, really nice. We are also using what we call hybrid crypto, right? When we combine a pure post-quantum, like ML, with the classical, like elliptic curves, to be sure that both of them are secure. Right? Because the new one, we don't know really whether they are secure somehow. So we combine them with a good old-fashioned, like elliptic curve, but the day we got a quantum computer, elliptic curve will die somehow, be becoming useless, oversimplify, and now the pure quantum crypto will get it. Now, the thing, so we always use those things, both of them, what we call the combo or hybrid, in TLS, in IPsec, and blah, blah, so a huge amount of stuff to be done. But we have one in TLS, which is only using pure quantum for digital signature. Not combination with RSA or whatever. And this is rough consensus, right? If you go on the mailing list, there are 10 emails a day and people are fighting to each other. But anyway, the new one, also linked to post-quantum. So if you want to use pure quantum algorithm, the signature are huge. And it's facing a big problem if you want to do this on IoT. Right? This is the plant, the working group that you are talking about. One which is interesting and far-fetched is tip-top. Taking IP to other planets. I mean, Mars and Moon, even if Moon is not a planet, I do agree, but tip-top is so nice acronym, right? So we are twisting the reality there. The challenge is basically the latency, the round-trip time. And so we need to change the quick timers and so on, so very interesting stuff. Another one is green. Guess what? It's about sustainability. It's about whether we can get young models to see the on-time consumption of electricity, of energy, and so on. Another one Is the digital emblem. It's like the red cross, the red croissant, or the red crystal that protects on paper, right? See what's happening worldwide, where hospitals are bombarded. For digital properties, like web servers, DNS names. So before launching a crypto attack or a cyber attack on a web server, you need to check whether it belongs to the Red Cross. And then if it doesn't belong to the Red Cross, you can attack it. If you attack it knowing it belongs to the Red Cross, that's a war crime. That's the big difference. Also not so easy to find the balance between the lawyers and the technique, but on this one, we are going there. Other stuff. If you look about all those devices from Cisco, right? They have in common something called VXLAN.
Anyone heard of it?
And VXLAN, look about this. Independent submission, informational. It's not the outcome of an IETF working group. It went to the independent submission. It's not a standard. Now, it's a de facto standard, right? Because everyone is using it. So, annoying. But the IETF is not completely stupid. We see there is a market. Everyone is using it, so let's try to standardize it, at least partially. And now you see it, it's a network working group, so IETF stream, but informational still.
Real quick on the previous slide, if you saw, like, it's an independent submission, which we said is usually like one vendor specific, but there's like a dozen different vendors all involved. But yeah, kind of funny.
So I will go quickly on the IEEE, so quickly, except if there are questions about the IETF, moving to the IEEE, and specifically the standard association of IEEE. Because IEEE is also making conferences, making journal and papers. In this case, it's a mixed entity, meaning Cisco, and individuals, depending upon the working groups. Right? It's not clear-cut like the IETF. Everything represents himself as an individual, no affiliation, even if everyone knows that I work for Cisco, of course. The working groups are created based on the PAR, Project Authorization Request. Pretty much like we do the BOF that we are creating for the agent-to-agent protocol. And then there's a step. So the RAS standards are prepared and reviewed by the working group, pretty much like the IETF. They are submitted to the standards committee for a ballot, like the ISG, and so on and so on. Something which is important, an IETF RSC cannot be changed. It can be updated by another one, but RSC, blah, blah, never change. It's immutable. It's carved in stone. IEEE standards can be amended, which is the reason why you say 802.11-2002 or 2020 or whatever. They put the name there. A recent PAR, 1 year and a half now, you see that for an amendment. So we will be changing 802.11, right, the Wi-Fi. And the project number and the name of the working group is this one. And why am I talking about this one? For this. They want to use post-quantum crypto, basically for the key exchange, right, for .1x. And they will be reusing IETF protocols because they are based basically on HEAP, which is an IETF protocol. So there is a huge amount of interaction between the two standardizations, and it works well, right? We have a coordination call every 4 months, so that's pretty fine. And look about the two of the people that are leading this, including the chair, 2 Cisco people again. Right? So you don't see it, but we are quite active in the standardization. So the amendment, as I said, this is how you change an existing protocol and existing standards at IEEE. For instance, .11 has been changed a huge amount of time, right? With some working group that you know, 802, everything which is related to LAN and wireless LAN, but you get also POSIX, you forget about it. Parallel port for the printers, if you still have one at home. Precision time protocol, PLC, this one I'm using at home, right? How to transfer Ethernet frames over a power line. And now how to read this. Reference like STD 802.11-2020. What does it mean? STD, it means it's a standard now. It's been approved, basically. 80, many years ago, they were using the first 2 numbers where the year. So 802 has been created in 1980, so they were reusing this. Nowadays, they don't do it anymore, right? And 2 was the second project of all the projects in 1980. Yeah, small thing, right? 11, this is the SUP working group. And 2020, that's the year. And I think they're changing every 4 years or something like that. So now if you look something like this, P802.11bi, P stands for project, right? No standards. 8, you know this. 11, same thing as before. BI is the amendment, right? It's the number that we are changing. It's typically a lowercase all the time. It's amendment to a baseline spec, so an existing specification. In this case, of course, it was 802.11. What was I about to say? Yeah, no, nothing. Conclusion. And sorry for rushing somehow on the IEEE part. It's written Nathan here.
Oh, I was sort of tuned out. I was listening to you for so long. All right, thank you. So setting expectations. Considerable time investment, personal. I mean, you get as much out as you're willing to put into it. If you just occasionally glance every once in a while, that's fine. If you really want to follow what's going on all the mailers, there's a lot more email to read. Some of them reference stuff where you're going to have to go look that up and get knowledgeable on that. So again, depending on how deep you want to go, there could be some time you need to spend here, but it's a good way to learn. You get to read a lot. They'll reference other things. You'll end up going through a chain of reference. I try to read one RFC. I end up having like 5 or 6 open by the time I'm done. If you can attend IETF online, like you said, you don't have to go in person. There is online attendance if you can't get out there. And as we were talking earlier, just find an area of interest, jump in. If it's not for you, jump into a different one after that.
Yeah. And besides listening like today, you can also write and becoming really active, right? It's not, I mean, I'm not a god, right? I'm simply an engineer. Like all of you. So all of you, all of us, basically, can do IPv10, right? I noted this. We will be doing IPv11, right, in the room, maybe. So it's really engineering, right? So no need really to be a vendor. And again, decisions are made on the mailing list, so you can influence there. This is how you end up within your name is an acknowledgement, for instance, like Nathan did. It's free. So you will see if you want to participate in meetings remotely, there is a fee of $200, but there is also a small print, fee waiver. You can apply to it, and you will get it. No question asked, right? You can be Elon Musk, for instance, or the most rich people of the world. You still get access for free if you want. Okay? It's typically the fees for Cisco employees that cannot be on site because we got enough money to pay for the remote fee, right? You are always individual, right? Again, not working for your employers or your student. No need, as I said, to be in physical meeting.
Did anyone notice anything weird about that laptop, by the way?
The what?
Yeah, screen's on the wrong side.
Yeah, I
want to get one of those.
I used Gemini on this 2 years ago, right? They make progress now.
It's gotten better since then. Yeah, that's old AI.
Yeah, old AI.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, it is next year AI. So, couple of pointers, you get access to the slide, right? There's the reason why I said this. There is a meeting in Vienna, so it's not a good time zone if you are based in US, in July, that you can attend, again, for free. Select the ones that are suitable for your morning. Could be nice. Something which is important to follow are typically the BOFs, right? Birth of feather. This is when we start a new working group, because there, everyone starts from scratch. So we explain the problem space and potentially the solution space. Because while if you are joining a working group like BGP, IDR, right, inter-domain routing, they will be talking about a community string of this value and on this bit and blah, blah, and you are lost, right? They are very too specific, but if you start a working group at the beginning, it's way easier. So something we would really like is to complete the survey. I know this is kind of unusual a Cisco Live session. We don't talk too much about Cisco product, but more about something which is important. Now you know about what is a draft and RSC and how to do it, the sausage-making machine behind it. So fill in the survey and provide comments, not only for this one, but for all the session. Go on.
I just wanted to thank you all for spending 90 minutes with us talking about standards documents, IETF. Hopefully you're willing to get involved, but if not, at least you've learned a little bit about how the process goes on behind the scenes. So again, just thanks for coming out. Hopefully it was a good use of your time. Fill out a survey. Feel free to come up to us afterwards. We'll be here for a bit to talk, but yeah, enjoy the rest of Cisco Live.
Thank you.